Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. The place where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we're talking about what it really means to show up, not just for ourselves, but for someone else. And I'm sharing Dennis with you today because he's going to talk about his experience working with the Big Brother organization and how mentoring has taught him so much, and he's gotten so much out of mentoring. So Dennis, welcome to the show. I will say he also wrote the book Stick Figure, A Big Brother Remembers, and we're going to get into that later. But tell us a little about yourself before we dive into what it means to be mentoring and be part of the Big Brother organization.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate you having me on the show. It's a great opportunity, and happy to be here. I am a resident of Gig Harbor, Washington. I live out here. I've lived out here for several years. I grew up in Montana. I was the second oldest of 9 kids. And so in that situation, it was a lot of fun. It was, you learned how to be responsible to one another. You learned how to get along. And one thing that really hit me was how involved my parents were in our lives. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was a dentist, and they really took the time to spend with all of us, to do different things with all of us, to help us get along as a family. And one time I remember as a kid, we were watching TV and they had these commercials on for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I told one of my sisters, I said, if I ever move away from home, I think I'll do that. And that is what eventually led me into mentoring, because I could not imagine what it would be like to grow up in a family without your dad there. I was fortunate. Both my parents my mom lived till 87 and my dad passed away last month at 95. So we had them in our lives for a huge period of time. And I just could not even fathom what it would be like not to have your dad with you in your journey of life. So that's kind of what got me into mentoring. As far as writing, I did a lot of writing in some of the careers I had. I worked for 26 years as a flight attendant, and during that period, I worked for our union during a lot of it and did a lot of writing for them. After that, I quit that and started doing real estate work. We had a team of 5 of us, and I was in charge of the marketing and copywriting and that. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I got into writing. That's how I got where I'm at today. And fortunately, I'm retired right now today, which is fabulous. The best gig I've ever had. And that has also given me a lot of time to write, which is I was able to finish up the Stick Figures book and another one during that period of time. So that's how it got me here today.
Wow, you've definitely lived a very interesting life and a very fulfilled life. I love the fact that you knew that you wanted to give back to the world like your parents gave back to you, and you use that legacy. And I think that's so important that we need to start remembering that what our parents did for us, that we can go forward with it. So what made you get involved with the Big Brother, Big Sister organization?
Mainly having, seen those commercials, I was aware of the organization. It's a national organization, and they have chapters all over the country. When I first started flying, I was in Minnesota, and my schedule was, we had a lot of days off. We had a lot of regular days off, and I had plenty of free time. So that's at the point I decided, okay, I'm going to go in here and apply for that. And I was matched with an 11-year-old kid. And you go into it, I think, with the feeling like, oh, I'm going to teach this kid everything and help save his life. But I found out pretty quickly that wasn't the situation. Him and his mom alone in an apartment where I grew up, with 5 or 9 kids of us in the house. And his situation was a lot different than mine. When I was 11 years old, I had a paper route and I was saving money to upgrade my bike. Here, this kid had a paper route at 11, and he was giving the money to his mom to help pay the rent. And so that was just a real eye-opening experience for me. And for a 4-year period, we would get together almost every week and do just hanging out. And it was one of the things where you really never knew if you're making any difference in this kid's life or not. You just continued to do it. But then I was one time with him and a friend, and the friend told me that, hey, he talks about you all the time. And so you knew, okay, this is making some difference. And that 4-year relationship turned into a lifelong relationship. I was in touch with him until he was killed in an accident a year ago. But, I was best man in his wedding, and I was godfather to his son. And I still talk to the family. In fact, I talked to his son last night for quite a while. But so I knew going into that it was a big commitment, and that it also provided me with some stability in those early years right out of college, and not with a lot of free time, unstructured time. Gave me a commitment to do, and took me out of my own head, because every week you're going to do something that is high on the scale of fun for an 11-year-old, not for somebody who's 23, where I was at the time. And it was good variety in my life doing that.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you stayed in touch, and I'm so sorry for the loss of him, because you can tell in the book, even though you were talking about being the big brother to a second young man, he still made it. That first one that you made an impact on you, and you mentioned him several times in the book, how you still get together with him and stuff. So I am so sorry for your loss, but I'm glad that you're able to share with your godson the memories of his dad, because that's something that, when I don't know how old the godson is, but that's something that he's going to have forever now, because somebody knew my dad. I may not remember him, but somebody remembers him.
Right. And when I spoke with him last night, he's talking a lot about his dad, and he is currently, it would be his niece. He's in the process of getting custody for her, and has been doing things with her. And he sees how, she's interested in doing these different things. And we're talking a little bit more than we used to be. So he's seeing what that kind of a role is like. And he's really, I think, proud to take it on and happy to take it on with her. So it's nice to see.
So the legacy lives on. But then you moved, and you started wanting to apply against the big brother or big sister, and that whole big controversy came about. And I'm so glad you were able to be part of Mike's life, but there was a whole controversy with that. So let's talk about when you moved.
I moved in, 1985. I moved out to Seattle and started flying out of the base there, and continued to do that for 21 years out of that base. So I thought, well, I'll just go apply for Big Brothers again. And what the national policy of the organization had been was, whatever your sexual orientation was, that the mother was told that, and they had the right to choose you yes or no on a Big Brother deal. But when I went to the Seattle meeting that night, the guy stood up in front of the group, and said, hey, we're looking for heterosexual role models for our kids. And I was like, what? And so I spoke with him afterwards, and it turned out that the Seattle chapter, it was Big Brothers of King County, I believe, had a lawsuit that they had lost. And so their way to address the problem of pedophilia was not only to increase their scrutiny, which is natural, but also to just bar any gay applicants from applying. So I met with the executive director the next day, and I told him, hey, you're not screening out the problem. You are just blocking other kids from getting a Big Brother from gay people who have, and they wouldn't even talk to me, because I had 4 years of experience doing this. The little brother, the mother, they were all still alive. They could have contacted them, but it was just a flat out no. And then I wrote a letter to the executive director after that. And about 6 months later, he called me and told me that they had taken the letter and some others that they had received to the board, and got that policy switched in line with the national organization, which it still is today, where they do accept gay applicants, and the mother or family has the final yes or no on whether you're matched with their child. So that felt good. And that if I had been matched when I first went in, I wouldn't have been matched with Mike, because Mike, my second little brother. And I had told him at the time that I would be willing to work with somebody after they accepted me, went through the screening and accepted me, that I'd be able to work with somebody that might be a little bit more challenging, because I had already done it before, and maybe that experience would help out with that. And so that's when I was matched with Mike, who was, he had been a foster kid since the time he was 2, in and out of foster homes. They put him back with the biological mother. She'd call the police and say she didn't want him anymore, on and on and on. And he was living with his foster mother, Betty, who was 63, and she was in the process of adopting him, which became final a couple months after I met him. And he was 7, she was 63, and her family was helping her out with that.
Ooh, now you gotta love her. But I also want to talk about too, there was such a waiting list for kids for having a big brother that I don't understand why they didn't open it. Why you had to jump through all these hoops months. And like you said, you wouldn't have been matched with Mike if you hadn't had to do this.
Right.
But why couldn't they just look at case by case basis instead of just doing a blanket rule?
It was the attorneys, they said, and the board just said, no, we're not going to do that again. So they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't. When I approached them, they were not even willing to take a look. It was just flat out, no, this is our policy. We've had it in here for 5 years and it's not going to change. Well, it did change a few months later, but there always is a waiting list for kids. They're looking for big brothers and big sisters. I don't represent the agency. All I am is a volunteer when I sign up for it. But, I'm in the process right now of being matched with another one. And the person that they're looking at to match me with has been waiting for 2 years for somebody to come along. The need is out there, that's for sure.
So let's talk about how you go about volunteering for big brothers and big sisters, and what kind of process that is. Because I know a lot of people are probably interested. They're probably thinking, I want to do this, but I just think it's going to be a long drawn out process for me to get approved. And then I don't want to have to go through all this, but there's a kid there that needs someone to just show up for them.
They have a variety of programs in a lot of areas. Some of them are the traditional community-based ones where you go out and work. The two of you go out and do that. And that the screening for that is really intensive now. I think it was about 6 hours of interviews and security checks, reference checks, all of those. So that is real thorough, which, an agency needs to do. Yeah. They also have some other programs that aren't quite as intensive and don't take as long to be screened for. The one was they had a lunch buddies program where you'd go eat lunch with a first grader twice a month and then go out to recess with them. They have some in the high schools and junior highs that are more vocation related as far as technical or online kind of work, things like that might help the people, especially who have some experience in that, go in and hang out with these kids and help them work on an organized basis, help them do activities related to that. So there's a variety of activities there, and it, time wise, does take the time to volunteer. It does take time to go hang out with the kid, and sometimes that's the last thing you want to do on a certain day. For me, I found that it was a good yank me out of my own head, my own little world for a while, and go do something different. And it was really rewarding, and it helped me out too. If you look at how many hours a week you spend looking at your phone and scrolling through online, you probably could find the time to go play basketball or ride bikes. So, yeah.
So we need to take a brief commercial break, but we'll be right back.
People welcomed me, and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling. They understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
In a world full of chaos, she chose to anchor her story in hope. Through storms and silence, she found strength, and now she's inviting you to do the same. This isn't just a book, it's a lifeline. For every woman who's ever felt unseen, your healing begins here. Anchored in hope. Available now.
And we are back with Dennis. And before we were talking about your first experience as a big brother and then your second experience. And that's what the book is, Stick Figures, A Big Brother Remembers. And people that don't know that were probably thinking, why stick figures? But it's such a significant part of your relationship with Mike. So tell us a little bit about Mike before you read part of your book.
Mike was 7 when I met him, and he had some neurological challenges. Primarily that was affecting his speech. He was in special ed at the time. We hadn't learned to read yet, which he did within the next year or so. He also was kind of emotionally stunted or behind. And so they were looking Betty said she wanted somebody that could teach him some boundaries and just help him with social situations and that. And so that's what we did. He loved going out together. He loved doing different things. His speech was a continual problem. So I would have him whenever we go somewhere to order food or that, he'd have to order his own to give him practice of talking. And you could see it was a struggle for him, but it helped him. It helped him grow like that. And our match was almost in two different periods. The first 4, 5, 6 years were a lot of fun. A little kid that was really, really out there and having a good time and loved life. And then about puberty, when he hit puberty, he developed mental illness, and the whole thing changed before that. And when we had hit 5 years together as big brother and little brother, I arranged with his mother and also the agency that he and I would go down to Disneyland for a couple of days. I was flying and had the pass benefits and whatnot. And so we did that. And this bit I'm going to read is actually from the first night of that trip. It's a little blurb of what it has some real significance to me and when looking at Mike's life. This is it. It's called Mike's Lucky Life. Can we watch a movie? Mike was on a roll. He had been talking nonstop since we returned from the hotel pool. Not tonight, Mike. Why? Why can't we watch a movie on TV? It's getting late and we're getting up early in the morning. Maybe tomorrow night we could. Who could blame him for being excited? We'd flown from Seattle to Los Angeles a few hours ago. The next morning we were headed to Disneyland. The trip was our celebration of 5 years as big brother and little brother. Years of friendship, years of adventure. Did you like flying on the airplane? Yeah. Did you? I did, Mike. It's the best part of my job. I get to travel a lot. You think you might like to do that when you get older, Mike? Maybe. Do you ever think of what you'd like to do when you grow up, Mike? No. For a few seconds, a weird silence hung in the room. Then Mike spoke. I just want to be normal. I want to be a normal kid. That comment hit me like a bomb. A normal kid. He didn't want to be popular like I did when I was his age. He didn't want a new bike or a new video game. He couldn't imagine a career. All he wanted was just to be normal. It was like making a birthday wish during a tornado. The kid makes the wish, and right before he blows out the candle, Mother Nature storms in and smashes the cake. The house remains standing, but the cake and the wish are nothing but smashed, scattered crumbs. You are a normal kid, Mike, I tried to tell him. I'm lying. Sounding convincing, Dennis? You are a good kid who likes to do things that all kids like. I meant it, didn't I? You have some challenges, Mike, but you are a normal kid. After a few minutes, Mike replied, I have a lucky life, he said cheerfully. I'm lucky. I got a good mom. I got my dog, Jake, and I got you and my house. I got a lucky life. Me too, Mike. I have a lucky life too, and I'm lucky to have you as my little brother. A few minutes later, Mike was sound asleep, but I kept tossing and turning. Try as I may, I couldn't forget Mike's voice. A lucky life. I got a lucky life. Mike did have a lucky life, but not a normal one.
I love that so much. I mean, you even talk about when you first start meeting him, because I'm going to read from your book. He said, knocking on the door of Michael's home that afternoon was a commitment to accept him as he was and a commitment to do what I could to help him. This time around, as a big brother, I knew I wasn't there to change him. My job was simply to show up and be patient and try to enjoy our time together, no matter where this journey might take us. Did you foresee anything like what ended up happen, that journey? I can't even imagine what you were going through, having to struggle with someone, trying to define the sweet little innocent kid that you met at 7. And then when he gets teenage years, he goes that mental illness steps in, and it's like he was a total different, change of personality.
I never imagined it. And the first time I called Betty and she said he wasn't home, he was at a psychiatric unit. I thought she had overreacted to something that had happened at home. But what happened was such a weird thing. I mean, he's a teenager. Okay, so that's, you have a God-given right to have weird behavior when you're a teenager.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you throw in the mental illness part of it, you just didn't really know what was happening. And it gradually got more and more erratic. His living situations changed. He couldn't live with Betty anymore because it wasn't safe. I'd go try to connect with him, and he would be at a group home, or he wouldn't be at the group home, or they wouldn't tell me where he was, or he had run away. All that just went on and on and on. But during that period, then it became a real struggle to maintain the commitment. For me, it was kind of, am I wasting my time? Is he getting anything out of this? And at that point, I made a decision that, no matter what happened, I'm just going to continue this so that he will have a connection to where he was with Betty. Betty was, at that point, her health was failing, and she couldn't take care of him or administer things. Mm-hmm. And so that was where I never, ever dreamed it'd be like that. And I never, it opened my eyes to what goes on with mental illness. It opened my eyes to what families go through to a degree. I wasn't there 24/7, but I could feel it. And it also opened my minds to the need for treatment and how difficult that is to obtain. Mm-hmm. And what an absolute group of angels the people who took care of Mike for that part of his life were, because they were doing work that most people couldn't do and most people couldn't bear. And so it was a journey of acceptance and a journey of living. And I had good support around me, my husband, the friends and whatnot that were really good. And they could see sometimes a little bit more objectively than I could as to what's going on. And they were real helpful during that time.
So you mentioned your husband. You both had little brothers at the same time, so you would take them out and do things together, which I love that because it made them feel like they actually had a friend that was maybe their age. So I love that.
Yeah, and Nate was kind of the opposite of Mike in that he was brilliant. He was just a very athletic, go-getter kid, high energy, fast moving. And Mike was, for example, once Joe came home and he said that they had done this. And during their get together, he said, "What'd you do with Mike?" And I said, "Well, we walked to the car and then we got in the car." We did one or two things. They were totally different personalities, but we did have fun together. It was helpful to Nate on how he learned to be really compassionate with Mike. And it was helpful for Mike just to have that buddy too. Nate is still in our lives. Nate was down here last weekend. We watched football together. He and his wife live near. He just turned 40, and Joe had met him when he was 7. So it's been a long journey, but it's been a great one. So
I love that. And the smile on your face when you talk about being a big brother. I mean, and that's something that everybody should give back to, because it just went to help someone else, but you ended up helping yourself, and you fulfilled something in you as well. Correct?
Correct. Oh yeah. Yeah. And there are other programs and too, or even if just go visiting somebody, anything that I do or anyone else does that helps somebody else helps yourself just as much or more. And that's what there's so much out there, especially now when the world's kind of helter-skelter. Sometimes just going out and hanging out with somebody and doing something fun for a few hours is good for both of you.
Now, let's talk about the transition from Mike when he became a teenager and he was going to all these group homes, because, excuse me, I applaud you for still showing up for him, because it was tough. When I was reading it, I was like, almost had tears in my eyes when you can't reconcile the sweet little kid to the person that you walk in and he just, you could tell he had been urinating in his vents, and when the heat came on, that's all you smelled. And just being around him and how he wouldn't take a bath or do any hygiene stuff, but yet you still showed up for him. Other people would have walked away and said, "No, he's a lost cause. I'm done. Okay, my time with him is over." But you still showed up. You still showed compassion for him.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had that real concern for him that maybe I can help him out, or just that he would know that somebody is still thinking about him. There was all kinds of stuff. And for me, in some ways, you would go and you would look at it and you just have to laugh at what was going on. We were playing chess in the hospital one time, locked in a locked room with underwear of every person on the ward wrapped around us. And you think, this is the most bizarre place ever. Mm-hmm. And he'd be beating me in all the chess games. He ran away one time dressed in his karate uniform, and then he was telling me about it. And I said, "Well, what were you doing?" He said, "I was blending in." at the University of Washington, and he was really heavy at the time. And I can't for the life of me think of how many 250-pound ninjas I've seen walking around the University of Washington. Mike was blending in. And so you had to laugh about it. But there were other times when you would go in there and you'd see him and he would be in just such a horrible condition and you couldn't really talk much, but you would play chess together, and that sort of cemented our relationship together at that point. Or you would see other patients in there and their parents in there. I remember riding up the elevator one day with these people who we were riding down, and I think it was the first time they had visited their son in that place, and you could just see the terror in their eyes and the sadness, and so it was a whole mix of all those emotions. And I learned that before I would go into the hospital, I'd stop and say a little prayer that, okay, whatever happens today, that it be good for Mike, or hopefully it'll help him out. And it was a challenging period full of interesting and horrific life theater all meshed together. And he called me one time and told me he was getting married from the psychiatric hospital. I go,
oh, wow.
What? And then the bride to be got on the phone and she just started jabbering away, and then I got Mike back on the phone, and so it's somebody that's there with you when you're getting married. When we get out, as soon as we get out, and I go, okay, well, why did you decide to get married? And he goes, she asked me. And then when I hung up the phone, I said to Joe, at that time we'd been together for 20, 30 years. And I said, the funny thing is they can get married, but we can't. But it was, it was just good life theater. And the stick figures things was our way of keeping track of what we had done those first few years. I gave him a calendar to start with. And if we just ended up sitting every day when we came home, sit with his mom for a while, talk to her, and I started drawing these two little rough stick figures, a big guy and a little guy in each thing, showing what we had done. And he had like about a 4-year set of maps of calendars that were a map to what we had done, but those were lost in his transitions into alternate housing.
I love the fact that you carried that on in the book, though, and named your book Stick Figures, A Big Brother Remembers, because, most people think, oh, I can draw a stick figure, but to actually give that to your mentor, to your little brother, and say, hey, look, this is what we did, so that he can look back on the times and see that. Did you have something special with your first little brother that you did, or was this just something?
No, we didn't. We had a special handshake, he and I did. And I did. He was kind of a latchkey kid a lot of times, so I didn't have that much contact with his mother, but they were very flexible, and she was very supportive. Whatever you guys want to do, go ahead. And we didn't have anything set like that, but Mike, it was kind of a neat thing to do. And it fit well with him too.
Yeah, he needed a visual reminder of what you were doing and when you were becoming next, so because of the disabilities. But you mentioned several times about the chess, about playing chess, playing chess with him, and how do you still have his chessboard? Because I remember you saying that you picked it up.
I do have it. Yes, I have it in my room, and I always would keep it set up with the move that he always did, which was move a pawn one space so he could move out in the next one. And that was always his first move of any game we played. And I rarely won a game with him. I mean, he could always see, he could figure out moves ahead and that and have a good plan for it. And I couldn't beat him. And, you'd think that would be one place where you might be able to win some chess games is in the psychiatric ward, but not the case. So, but it was good. I mean, it tied us together and had our little routines when we'd get together and that. So
I love the fact that you still have the board, because when I saw where you went after you found out what happened, we'll talk about that in a second, that you went and grabbed the chessboard and with you, because I think a lot of people would have just said, okay, that's an experience I've learned from, but he made such an impact on you. You wanted something tangible. Your memories aren't going to go away, but you wanted something tangible, and honor him as a tribute to him. And I love that.
Yeah, it was the first thing I did. I mean, there were 2 boxes of stuff. That's what he ended up with, the 2 boxes of stuff. And one of them was a bunch of filthy clothes. And then the other one had some odds and end papers and this and that with it within there. But the chessboard is something I really wanted. I wanted to make sure that I had that because it had been so important in our visits during that period of time. And it took me, actually, I think I had that box after the initial pulled that out, I had some other stuff in there, and it took me about 5 years before I went through it, opened it up and tossed it.
Because you had to deal with what
it happened, right?
Happened and everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what happened to Mike. And it was so sad. I was bawling when I was reading that part. I mean, I was bawling because I could see the amount of influence you had on his life and how much it was hurting you as well to see him struggle and go through. So let's talk about Mike and what happened.
He had run away quite a few times from different hospitals, and we would go looking for him. And a couple times we'd find him. Sometimes he'd show up back home, whatever. But what happened was he was in the state hospital, and whenever they would drop down on his medications, he would become more verbal, almost like coming back to normal. But then the weird behavior would start. And so they had dropped down on him. And one woman says, he's doing much better. Have you noticed he's doing much better? And then what happened was they gave him some free time and to go out and by himself after 2.5 years of being locked up. Here you go out for a half hour, and he disappeared, and he was gone for a week until they found, where he had made his way up to Seattle and had ended his life up there. And it was just hard to believe. You don't really know what to think. I was comforted by the fact that when I went out to pick up the stuff that, that Mike wasn't locked up anymore. He wasn't. Whenever it get cold, you wouldn't be worried that he was out sleeping on the street or anything like that. You would just know that was unfortunate, that he had less freedom than the dogs I have. And, to see him living like that, it did not appear it was going to get any better, no matter how much therapy they tried, how much drugs, it wasn't going to get better for him. And so I came to accept that. But there was a deep, deep, deep sense of loss of that. And, his adoptive mom, knew about it and I'd go visit her, and then she, sometimes, do you know Mike died? Do you know Mike died? Yeah, I know Betty. So that was really, really difficult because you had such high hopes for him, or to see somebody who was so loving and so loved life quite a bit, and to have that, all the challenges he had been through as a young kid, to see that moving in a positive direction, and then boom, you get hit with this disease that you don't have any control over, that nobody can cure, that nobody can change. And the first time I saw him at a psychiatric ward, he didn't know why he was there. He couldn't figure it out, and he was trying not to wash his hands too much because he didn't want him to think he was crazy. And so that's, that you were dealing with some really tough stuff. But for me, I'm grateful that we had that time together. I know that it gave him some peace and happiness in his life, the things we did, and it helped him help things be stable. It helped Betty a lot too, to have that time where he would go out and do something different, and it helped me enormously. And I'm really grateful for the time I had with him.
So let's talk about how you and Betty both found out that he had taken his own life. I mean, because that I can't even imagine.
I had gone to Oklahoma the day I got the call that he had walked away from the hospital. I had gone to Oklahoma that weekend for a football game, and we decided, well, there was nothing we could do. Mike's run away before. He could be anywhere. When we get back, we'll go searching for him. And so we got back that day, and a couple of days later, ready to go around here and put up some pictures or something at the shelters and see if we could, find out where he might be. And I got a phone call from his adoptive sister, Betty's daughter, that there was a sketch in the paper, and they were trying to identify a body of somebody who had committed suicide up in Seattle and a week ago. And she said, it's Mike. And I thought she was kidding. And she said, no, they're to a teacher, and somebody else had already called. The police department said the same thing. And so we stopped and got the paper, and sure enough, it was this little sketch of him with a half smile on his face. and that was Mike. So he was cremated, and eventually his ashes and Betty's ashes and Jake the poodle were all scattered together when she passed away. I have a little container of both Betty's and Mike's ashes in my house. And after I finished the book, I've been thinking, okay, I'm going to go probably spread these somewhere that I know of that's going to be appropriate. But it was tragic. It was really tragic. And when I went to pick the stuff up at the state hospital, they were shell shocked, but I think they were also extremely, extremely nervous that this is going to end up in a lawsuit, although it never did. But it was a good life, and he had a chance. And the book is dedicated to Betty because she was an absolute angel, and she gave this kid a chance, and she did everything within her power to advocate for him and to help him out. And it was all about him, taking care of him. And she had since the time he was 2. And so wonderful lady. I know there's a lot of those unsung heroes out there, and kudos to every one of them for what they do because it's important.
Yeah. So let's talk about you continuing your relationship with Betty after Mike passed, because you could have easily walked away and said, I'm not going to even keep in contact with her or anything, but you were grieving just as well as she was. And you were there, kind of supporting her still.
Their family and her and also Nate's mother had been so supportive of Joe and I in that whole thing, and some of the hitches with the agency that we had along the way they were like family, and we would, they would come visit us. We'd go up and see her in Seattle, and it was really they were like family. I saw her a few times as she several times actually, and then she started kind of losing it, and we were actually up there the night she died, when she died. And it was just a wonderful person, a wonderful family, good people. So yeah, it was not questioned that we weren't going to keep in touch with her after all of that.
Do you still keep in touch with her daughter and stuff? Or?
Her daughter and her son I contacted after I read the books, or wrote the book. Linda had already read it, and he read it too. They gave me a little bit of feedback on it, but they both liked it. Yeah, they're I don't keep in touch with them too much, but kind of know they're out there, and it was a great experience. It was good to write about it, get it out, and the story kind of is to honor that kid, that bring those stick figures to life. That hey, this is what we did. We had fun, and we had fun because of the time we shared, and hopefully that inspire some other people who might have some spare time on them, their hands, who might want to help somebody else, that there are ways that you can make a huge difference, not only in that person's life, but also in your own, by doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, I applaud you, number one, for just giving up your time, because a lot of people are like, our time's precious, but you gave it up not once but twice, and then you became involved. You became like family to these boys, and now you're looking to do it a third time, which is amazing. I love that, now that you're retired, because a lot of people don't know what to do after retirement. So you're opening up your life to someone else again. You're maybe not as quick as you were when you were younger, when you were doing the younger, but you're still managing to give of yourself. So what would you tell people who want to give of themselves, but they're kind of scared that either they're not going to be the right fit, or if they're not going to be, or they have all these misconceptions and stereotypes in their heads about what you're supposed to be as a mentor or as a big brother or a big sister?
I heard a woman on a podcast one time that was a minister, and she was talking about her work with the juvenile detainees that are in lockup, and she said that she would go and visit them and whatnot. And her idea was that she didn't have a fix. She didn't have any magic potion. She didn't have anything that was going to fix their whole thing. But what she had was a ministry of presence, a ministry of showing up and sharing her time with these people. And the most valuable thing we have is time. And if we share that and just kind of take it easy, let them, what does the kid need? Share some time with the kid. It can make a huge difference in 2 lives, years of them. I do some work at the juvenile detention facility here. And a lot of the guys that are in there, you get talking a little bit about family structure, and they don't have any, one kid one time told me who have been the role models in your life. And his answer was my parole officer. Well,
Wow.
the hope is to get much before you have a parole officer would be probably a more valuable time. So people, everybody, each one of us has their own unique talents, and we have our gifts that we can share with other people. And you're not, you don't replace dad. You're just a friend, and a good friend, it can go a long way in your life.
And plus too, maybe a friend that they can feel comfortable talking to, whereas if it's a parent or a foster parent or an adopted parent, that they're not. Because there was one situation with Mike, we won't get into it, but where he wasn't, but you could tell something was wrong, but he wasn't comfortable telling his adopted mama, Betty, about it. But yet he was able to come out. You gave him the space and knew that there was not going to be any judgment with what he said. And it just gave him, he was able to tell you, and then you were able to kind of help him, nudge him to tell his adopted mom about the situations. Is amazing to be able to just no judgment and just be open and know that they can come and tell you anything, which I think is.
And that's one thing that in that situation, when it was all out and that at the end of the conversation was she asked him why he would tell me, but he wouldn't tell her. And he looked right at her and said, "'Cause him's my trusted friend." And that says that, okay, this is somebody who can trust and you can help them through that kind of stuff. But it's, it took a while to get it out of him, but eventually, and I always gave him
the space.
Right. I always gave him the option of how he wanted to deal with it too. If I thought it was something, either we can tell her when I'm there and she won't kill you, or, I didn't say that, or you can tell her when I leave and I'll call her and make sure you told her. So that was kind of he had a choice in how to make things a little easier for himself.
Yeah, I love that though. I started laughing too, because I'm like, okay, what one kid may equate to what it actually is, and maybe something totally different. So I'm like, okay, but our time is almost up. Is there one little thing that you either want to reiterate, something that you want to make sure that people get across, or maybe something we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? The floor is yours right now.
I would just encourage people to get out there and do something, because in this environment, it is so important to people to break down the barriers a bit and help some people. And you have people who have lived through COVID. You have I think our communication skills got broken down a lot during COVID, but there's so much you can do, even for a family member, or even if you're a parent, and just take a little bit of extra time and hang with one of the kids for a while and just make them feel, okay, I can trust this person. This guy's, that's it. The trust is important, but it's also just sharing your time. It's not sharing, I never really shared any of my writing or stuff like that with my little brothers. It was just simply go out and ride bikes or go swimming or ride. I taught my first little brother how to drive, and his mother called me after that. Of course, I didn't clear with her. Things were a little looser in the 80s.
Yeah.
But she's still quite the character, and she appreciates it too. She appreciates how much it helped him and helped them. So.
Yeah, I don't think I would want to teach someone how to drive. After driving with my 3 girls, I'm like, I do not want to do that. They're young adults now, so I can't even imagine have someone else in the car trying to teach them how to drive. I'm not going to do that.
I used to think driving instructors must have had the most high stress job you'd ever find, because you don't never know how somebody's going to react on that.
For sure.
Yeah.
So tell people where they can find you.
I have a website, djquinnauthor.com, and the books are available for sale there, and I'll get them out to you. You can get a better deal there than on Amazon, and they are also available on Amazon and some of the other major retailers. But but djquinnauthor.com is a good place to get them, and I appreciate you reading the book and getting the message out, and it's a good read. It's not a long read, but it's heartfelt, and shows a little bit about you can do that to help somebody else in some of the crazy situations you might find yourself in, trying to navigate. But yeah, for me, it was one of the best things I ever did in my life. It has been one of the best things I've ever done in my life, because it really got me out of my own head. It really got me out of my own problems. It really helped me understand what other people go through. And that's a real good life lesson.
So how long between Mike and deciding to volunteer again? How many years has it been?
It's been almost 20. When I was doing real estate work during that period, that was so time consuming and so, so overwhelming. I have other commitments too that I do. And so all of that together, it just wasn't the right time. Right now it feels good. Like I said, my father just passed away, and there had been my brothers and sisters had all rallied really hard and helped him out and just kept him company in that. And I would go back to Montana periodically and help out with that. So it has the time. It probably feels like a pretty good time to do it. And we'll see how it goes. But
yeah, I would love for you to come back on and share how it goes when you get a new one, and talk about how different your experiences have been with each one, because each one is different because everybody's different.
Right. Yeah. And even with Nate, it's nice to still be in touch with him, and he and Joe still have a great relationship. And we have been through some ups and Joe and he and I have all been through some interesting ups and downs in his life, and it's been a great journey. And he's really, we travel together sometimes on Husky football adventures, and he says you guys are more fun to travel with than my wife, because she'd never want to drive a couple hundred miles out of the way just to look at one stadium or something like that. It's been fun.
Yeah, I love that. I love that how the bond continues to grow. And so I just, applaud you, number one, for giving up your time, not to one child, but 2 children, and now 3. And then you also said through the juvenile detention facilities as well. I mean, a lot of people, they're the forgotten ones in society, and you're saying, no, I'm going to show up for them. A lot of people don't show up. So I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And I hope this interview makes a much impact on people that are listening, as being a big brother made an impact on you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope so too. And I appreciate your time, and good luck with all your work here. It's rewarding. All right.
Yeah. So guys, I'll put in the show notes more information about the Big Brother, Big Sister organization if you're interested, more places where you can find Dennis, as well as his Facebook. He didn't mention Facebook, but he's on Facebook as well. I'm sure if you message him on Facebook, he would be happy to chat with you some more, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
So until next time, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Well, friends, that's it for today's chat here in the Blog Cabin. I hope something we shared sparked a thought, warmed your heart, or gave you a little encouragement for your journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a new conversation. And if you'd like to spread a little love, leave a review or share this episode with someone who needs it. Remember, this little cabin isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a space where we show up, share stories, and shine a little light together. Until next time, keep living with hope, keep anchoring yourself in love, and never forget, you've got a seat saved here in the Blog Cabin. Take care, friends, and I'll see you in the next episode.